Hi, I'm John Gibson with Aerocharger.
I'm Brad Riley. Today we're going to take a close look at a Polaris RMK 800 turbo kit. What to expect when UPS drops off the boxes. Is this what we receive?
Absolutely. You're going to receive two boxes. You're going to receive the turbo box itself, and you're going to receive the kit box as you see here.
Well, let's tear into that turbo box and see what we got.
First thing you're going to notice when you open your turbo box is your turbocharger guidelines. Reading through this is a necessary step just to give you an overall view of how the turbo works, what not to do, and how to go ahead and set it up before use. Now this is what we call our 66 series turbo. This is one of 3 different trim sizes we have in this turbo.
What size is this?
This is what we call a 200 250.
What that means is the 200 is the compressor size, so this is a 200% of the original design intent. In this frame we also have a 178, phenomenal for like a 700 or 600 motor. We also have a 224, good for some of the old Cat 1000s and stuff we use in the automotive industry quite a bit. So the compressor is right in the middle of what we have available. The 250 turbine is also right in the middle of the road. We actually go down to a 200. We play with that a little bit on the 6s and 7s, but on the 8, the 250 just works phenomenal. We also have a larger 300 turbine, but doesn't give you quite the drivability. So the 200 250 is just a perfect match for the 800s.
Now these turbos are going to come with a stainless steel ceramic coated heat shield on the exhaust side. It's also got an additional layer of heat wrap on the inside for that additional barrier of heat.
That's really important to keep the heat down from underneath the hood of a snowmobile. That's something we're always trying to do. We're firm believers in pulling our air from there. So this a little bit of effort, to keep the heat out of the internal engine compartment is very important. Now, on this housing, we've got something very unique that we do. On the turbine inlet, we actually this would normally have a flange on it. Much like a T4 flange. We actually have that machined off, and then we weld on a ball joint. That allows us to get the turbine wheel as close to the pipe as possible. We carry as much energy. You get that throttle response and that nice crisp feel that everybody likes. What else can you tell us about the turbo?
Sure. Your heat shield here is actually going to act as the outlet gasket. As you will notice, the turbo does come with 2 bottles of oil.
The oil that we use is a kind of proprietary blend. It's a full synthetic turbine oil. 2 bottles for the 66. Shows where we put that in. And what's important, go ahead and put 2 bottles in. Don't worry about it. Check it in a couple of years. If you went 5 years, I really don't have a problem with that. As general maintenance, check it every fall. Where do we put the oil in it?
Right here is your compressor cover on this turbo. You're going to notice it's got 2 plugs in it. One of them has got a hole in it. It's about a 30 thousandths hole. The other one's going to be a plug. The one with a hole in it is what we call our vent. It's basically going to sit at the very top of the turbo, and it's going to escape any gases that do expand inside of this oil reservoir. So what you want to go ahead and do is take the plug out of the cover, and that's where you'll add your 2 bottles of oil in. And then when you're done, go ahead and take some blue Loctite, preferred, and Loctite this plug back in.
What else comes in the box?
With all our snowmobile kits, you're going to receive a dome mesh air filter. This is going to go basically right here on the turbocharger when it's ready to be run.
We really like the dome air filters. It's something we came up with a number of years ago. It's a fairly coarse mesh. It's just to keep the big components out. We're not concerned about a little bit of snow getting in there. People have been doing water injection on engines for years. They'll absorb actually a fair amount of water. So the screen just keeps out the hard chunks, anything that would actually damage the compressor wheels. And we get very good performance. There's no vacuum. We get a nice charge to the compressor. What are the hoses hanging off of there for?
This is going to be your reference line hose right here. This big long one, if you read through your instruction manual, will list what this is for. But this actually goes up to your boost gauge. The turbocharger's reference comes straight off of its own housing outlet. So basically all I do is pull a fitting off of this, tee it, and then we run this straight to your boost gauge. That way we've got an accurate reading of boost at the turbocharger outlet.
This is the boost controller. Right now, we ship them out set at.
These are always going to be set at 5.5 pounds of boost. Now, the settings in the turbo should be set for me the way it is. You shouldn't have to change anything.
As a general rule, we always send them out at 5.5 pounds. It's a good idea just to start. It's not something we're saying where we want you to run it. We want you to run it where you get the power that you're satisfied with. If they want to turn it up, what do we got to do?
You're going to get a extra set of washers and spring. Now, this has a green spring with 1 washer in it currently, which is set up for 5.5 psi. You can add shims behind this boost spring to add half-pound increments in boost, or you can just go ahead and pull that 5.5 pound spring out and put the 7-pound spring in with up to 4 shims, adding up to around 9 psi.
You know, that video I mentioned earlier, Aerocharger controller on YouTube, covers the sheet. It'll walk you through a lot of this. Something important for the 2 strokes, and that is a huge asset to the Aerocharger, is the vane controller on the front is a variable setting. Basically, you're adjusting the AR ratio. That allows you to fine tune this for not only your specific sled, should you have any modifications to it, the altitude you're running at, but also the drivability. We set it to where it works good, but it is a tool to fine tune. And I encourage you to play with it. I encourage you to watch the video, because you'll really get it to where it's customized to you. If you want to screw the controller in, slow the turbo down, it'll act more like a conventional turbo. You want to pull it out, it'll get real zippy. But definitely watch that video, and it's a great tool for tuning the Aerocharger to a 2-stroke.
Yeah, and always refer back to your turbo guidelines in case you're unsure on anything, or even call us.
But our housings that we use is a D5 Ni-Resist. It's about 38% nickel, and so it's essentially a stainless steel. Every other turbocharger that you see out there, be either ductile iron or simulcasting, those will corrode. Snowmobiles are horrible about having high humidity levels. This casting will stay looking nicer longer, and we do cover it with a ceramic coated heat shield, but it's a nice casting.
Absolutely. Yeah, this turbocharger is pretty much set up from us, ready to rock and roll. All you've got to do is bolt it up, put oil in it, and you're done.
So we've pretty much looked at the turbo and what's included in that. John's our head turbo guy. We thought we'd bring him in here for this, but at this point we'll tear into the kit a little bit more and send John on his way, and probably bring Corey out here, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Yep. All right, guys, now that we've looked at the turbocharger with John and gone through some of that, I've got Corey Ellis here, who's our production engineer. And again, you've probably met Andrew Day. He's been with us for a long time. He kind of helped found the kit business many years ago. Wanted you guys to meet these guys. If you ever have tech calls, you'll talk to one of the 3 of us. This basically makes up the engineering staff here at Aerocharger. But everybody say hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Okay, that was very good. Anyhow, let's get back to the components. So here we are in our kit box, and the most important thing is the manual. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about what's in there?
Well, in every manual we include the instructions to install the kit. They come in a nice booklet. It's pretty comprehensive, got photos for everything.
Could you Vanna white those for us a little bit?
We got all the instructional stuff, and then you go through and there's pictures of everything. And then that's pretty much, it's pretty easy to understand, and if you have any questions you can call us, and our phone number's in the back of those.
Yeah, it's just step-by-step instructions just to make your job as easy as possible.
So hopefully, you can go through that.
And you won't have any questions.
Yep, and not that we don't love talking to you, but what else is included in there?
We get some stickers, for make your snowmobile look real good. Show that you have an Aerocharger.
No, that's good for...
It's like 5 or 6 horsepower.
Now, can you put multiple stickers on there?
Yeah, but you gotta balance them out, otherwise the weight gets off and the sled's handling goes...
Right, very important. And the last thing that comes in there is actually something fairly important.
It's your fuel controller field guide. It explains all the different modes. All the different modes are on here on your fuel controller, describing what they do and how to adjust them. We have recommended settings. It talks a little bit about air-fuel ratios, and it's just a really good reference when you're trying to tune the fueling on your snowmobile.
We send the kits out with a pre-programmed settings on them. Should be able to put it in. Have good luck. Should you choose to fine-tune it, we provide an air-fuel ratio gauge that we'll get into later. We explain how you can fine-tune it if you choose to. And if you get lost on the sheet, you've always got your default settings to go back to. And pretty simple though.
Yeah, and it's a laminated sheet. You're not gonna have to worry about it. You can throw it in the bag on your sled. You're not gonna worry about it getting wet or anything like that, and the color's fading. So you should be, if you want to carry it with you, go right ahead.
Oh, this is the muffler. This is what keeps it quiet coming out of the turbo. We open this guy up right here. Bubble wrap all our components. This is an all stainless steel part. Everything on here is stainless steel, and then we wind up ceramic coating it, so it's looks real good on your sled. It bolts right into factory locations, mounts real solid, and holds the turbo right where it needs to go. We include slotted holes on the flange so that if there's any tweaking you need to do, say you rolled your sled before the install and your frame's a little tweaked, we left a little bit of adjustment there so that you can make sure it fits really well into your sled.
All the mounts, everything mounts to stock, stock locations on the sled. They're all really solid. You're not going to worry about gaskets or anything like that blowing out.
We TIG weld everything on there, don't we?
Yep, everything's TIG welded, just for, a real nice finish. Just looks cleaner.
So at the end of the day, we've got a full stainless steel muffler. It's been TIG welded. On some of our components, we'll even backgas them if necessary. And then we take the time to ceramic coat it. The other thing to note on that is how free the exhaust flows out of it. That's very important for a turbocharger turbine. You don't want to have any back pressure. Any back pressure, any resistance leads to inefficiencies. Say you've got a pound of back pressure in your muffler. That relates directly to your pipe and back to the head, and it's going to hurt your spool up. It's going to hurt your top end performance. It will aid in detonation. So as you look at all of our designs, you always see that it's as free flowing as possible. What do we got there, Corey?
This is our charge tube for the air to water system on the RMK. Notice we get it out of the package here. Comes pre-assembled with the hose clamps on each side and the blow-off valve already installed with its line. The line's labeled exactly where it goes. This one goes to the manifold. Well, we chose full silicone charge tubes so we have the minimum number of connections in our charge tube system. Every time you have like an aluminum bend and then a piece of silicone and then another aluminum bend, every one of those joints creates an inefficiency in the flow, and that all adds up to excess back pressure and pressure drops from the turbine to the engine. So pretty much we go with a full silicone piece so that the connections are minimized and the flow is the most efficient it can be.
Well, on that, even what's nice about silicone over even just a mandrel bent piece of aluminum is, for instance, in your radius right here, you can go to a more relaxed radius. It's easier for the flow, but then obviously we had to go to a tight radius here. On mandrel bent aluminum tube, typically you always have to use the same radius throughout the whole tube, or you put a joint in there. On silicone, we can use different radiuses at different locations, and it comes up with a smoother part. But now tell us about the blow-off valve, because that's another part that you helped design and engineer.
Well, we went to a blow-off valve that we drew up ourselves. What this guy does is you can actually take this cap off, and inside's a spring and a diaphragm, and you can actually adjust the spring tension on it.
We ended up making our own blow-off valves. What's out there in general, the springs are too heavy. And when you get out of the throttle, there's not enough vacuum on two-stroke engine to pull the diaphragm open to dump the excess pressure. So, when we went and made our own blow-off valve, we were able to spec our own springs. All of our two-stroke applications have a very light spring in there. That way, as soon as you get out of the throttle, it'll dump. That way, when you get back in it, the turbo's right there waiting for you. You're not, stalling the compressor, then having to recharge the entire system.
Let's see what we got in here. Well, first thing we got is we have hardware mounting for all 3 years. Polaris changed their exhaust mounting bracket the way that we attach the muffler at between 11, 12, and 13. So
they just To make it easy on us, we just ship all of them?
Yep, we ship all of them because really there's not a lot of cost, and it makes it easier for us. And also, if the customer wants to change years on their sled, they have all the hardware to do it.
Or from a dealer standpoint, if they're stocking a kit and they don't know whether the customer walking through the door is going to have an 11, a 12, or a 13, boom, one kit. You know that
Works on everything.
We've got you covered on that. What else do we have in there?
What else we got? We got the looks like we got the Airbox mounting hardware.
Okay.
The way we mount the Airbox is we actually use these special little spherical washers.
Yep.
And they seat into these little tabs that go onto the boot plate.
Spherical washer, readily available, but wasn't readily available in the size configuration we wanted.
Yeah.
You draft up a part, we source it, simple.
Pretty much. And it makes it real easy. It was a pretty slick way to keep the airboxes on. Zip ties. You always need zip ties
Very
when you're
important.
installing. We'd like to include those just so you don't have to have them. Extra springs, because when you put the turbo on, we give you extra springs to put on your Y pipe to your expansion chamber. That way you can help hold it on, and also you need springs to attach the turbo, and we include ones with our kit.
We end up doubling up the springs due to the excess back pressure in the system, just to keep everything sealed up. Turbos operate on exhaust pressure and temperature, so we include the parts that you need. This is something real important that we've done really from day one on a lot of our kits. But Andrew, why don't you tell us what's included in there?
Because we're running a blow-off valve, we have to have a source to pick up manifold pressure from the engine. So what we have in here is a tap, a drill bit, and the fitting. You'll end up tapping the throttle body on the engine side of the blades. Install the fitting. This will allow us to pick up the pressure signal, and that way we can use a blow-off valve. If you don't have a fitting like this on the engine side, there's no way to use a blow-off valve, and it's just,
The tap that's included is a quarter 28.
Yep, quarter 28.
It's not an oddball tap.
No,
but not everybody's going to have it.
That's it. A lot of guys don't even have tap sets, and if they do, they're going to have the coarse thread taps. They're not going to have the fine thread. So it's just, it's a cheap part for us. Throw it in there. Now you got an extra tool.
We just felt that, on a premium kit, we should try to include, these little things that help make your install easier, saves you time, and we're happy to do so. What else do we have in there?
Just bolts to mount the turbo on.
Okay.
We actually pre-lube the bolts with anti-seize. That way, if you don't happen to have any in the shop or you forget to put it on and you get your turbo installed, there's enough anti-seize on there that the bolts are not going to lock onto the turbo, and you will actually be able to take them off later.
It's one of those things that is very easily overlooked. Sometimes, especially if you're paying somebody for an install and they're not, they're racing the clock, they'll sometimes forget that step, cause you a headache later. It has absolutely nothing to do with performance. It has nothing to do with the install. It has everything to do with servicing the turbo at a later date, moving it to a different sled. We want to make sure that it's easy down the road, so we go ahead and take the time to use a good copper-based anti-seize.
Yep. Last thing, rope relocation kit. This is actually pretty simple. We got a little bolt that holds the rope, and then we have 3 holes now. On the 11s and 12s, we actually use these 2 holes. Same kit we've been doing for years. It bolts onto the back of the brake caliper, and then this bolt goes in there and pulls the rope away from the turbo. On the 13s, we had to do something different, but we wound up actually using the same bracket once again so we can switch between years on the sleds, and we just use this center hole, and it still bolts behind the caliper, but this rope relocation just goes to this center hole because there was less clearance with the new belt drive system.
So this is for our air-to-water system.
These are the rubber tubes that we use to connect the air to water into the factory coolant system. We actually use the factory coolant to cool our cores. Do you want to talk about that, Andrew?
Yeah, we went and used the factory coolant as the coolant for our air-to-water cores. We know it's not the coldest water possible, but it will provide you a very consistent temperature all day long. That way you don't ever have to worry about tuning, whether it's 40 below outside or it's 40 outside. You're still going to ride. You're still going to have pretty much the exact same air temperatures going into the engine. Just makes it real easy as far as tuning goes. It's just, part of the wiring harness that actually we'll just plug into the factory DC outlet on the sled. Makes it real easy, no cutting or split, into the wiring harness. You're not using T-tabs or anything like that that's going to, possibly corrode or come loose. These are all plug-and-play fittings, as waterproof as they can possibly be, just to make sure you don't have electrical problems down the road.
Oh, this is our fuel line for the RMKs.
Go ahead and pop that open.
Yeah, we like to use high quality fuel lines. We have these custom made for us with all the crimp-on fittings, all done professionally. That way it looks like an OEM fit.
Some of our competitors out there will just hand you a piece of hose, have you cut it up, put hose clamps on there. Heaven forbid if one of those hoses ever came off and started to fire in the sled. It's a danger issue, so we absolutely did not skimp a dollar here to give you the best component we possibly could.
Solenoid valve, it's part of our fuel control system. What this guy does is this guy actually helps the fuel controller calibrate to atmospheric pressure on startup. We pre-assemble all the lines and label where they go, so it's easier on you for the install.
So the next thing is, Andrew, why don't you cover this for the guys since that's kind of your baby?
Yeah, this is the fuel controller for your Pro RMK. This one's actually for 11 and 12. This is a part that unfortunately won't go on every year. Polaris changes the wiring harness, and because of that, we have to send you a different controller. So if you do decide to switch from your 11 to maybe a 13 this year, call us up. We'll sell you a new controller. We'll sell it at a fair price for sure. But
and if a guy has one in stock, we'll just swap them out.
Yeah. Like I said, everything's plug and play. These will just plug into the factory injectors to pick up the signal that we're using. It allows us to modify the factory injectors. Then we also add 2 additional injectors in the Airbox, which we'll show you later. That's pre-assembled. They just plug right in, real easy system. Then there's another connector on here that's for the solenoid. All that's doing is, like Corey said, every time we restart the sled, we fire the solenoid. It allows the pressure sensor, which is what this blue hose goes to, allows it to calibrate for ambient atmosphere. That way, you're providing the proper fuel for your engine. When you go up and down in altitude, it's not going to be overfueling or underfueling it because the pressure sensor's out of calibration. Then there's one other wire on here that we get questions about. It's just an add-on port. Right now it's not active, but if we come out with a new system to make use of it, we'll just reflash your box real easy. Then you'll have the latest and greatest. You don't have to buy all new hardware.
Just like any electronics, electronics are always changing. This box has changed for us at least half a dozen times.
Yeah, we've made a couple different revisions of the program. We find little things that clean up the way the sled runs.
Or even the hardware. We put the extra port on there. Should we choose to do something with it, you've already got the hardware. We can flash you. If you've got experience with this box or your buddy has one from a couple of years ago, it really does not apply to the current box. And always be looking for updates on electronics.
Yeah, well, the hardware might look the same as something that your buddy's got on an old turbo sled from 5 years ago. It's not the same hardware. It's fairly proprietary as far as the industry goes. We have hardware that it's pretty much no one else out there that does. I guess I'll talk about this. It goes along with the fuel system.
Yep.
It's an Innovate air fuel ratio gauge, and like I was showing you earlier, that wiring harness. We put plug-ins on here. That way, all you have to do is plug it in. You're not having to wire anything in. It's just, I keep saying it, but it's just plug and play, just to make it easy for you. Even though it might only save you 2 minutes in the install, that's 2 minutes faster to being able to ride.
It's an opportunity not to switch wires and cause damage to components.
Short something out, fry it. What's kind of cool about these gauges, they have an LED ring around the outside that's green, yellow, and red. Typically, when you're low speed cruise idle, it's going to be right in between red and yellow. While you're out riding, it's going to be yellow, just like a trail riding type deal. Not real hard on the throttle, but when you're out there in deep snow, you hammer on the throttle. You want to see that lights over here being green. It's letting you know right away that you have the proper air fuel ratio. We pre-program these before they go out for the air fuel ratios we like to see in each color. That way, while you're riding, like I said, you just look down and see it. When you're flying up the hill, wide open throttle, trees coming at you pretty fast, and it's a lot easier to see a color than trying to look down and see exactly what number you're looking at.
It'll come with a silver bezel as well if you choose to use that to match your sled. But that color thing for me is a big deal on some of our race sleds. We're at full boost, full power. Things are happening fast. Look down, boom, green. You know you're okay. And also another thing to also remember, we really care about the air-fuel ratio only at wide open throttle.
Yeah, wide open throttle is definitely the most important. Cruising around, guys will call and say, it's reading this number, whether it's 14 or whatever. It's like, isn't that really lean? Well, if you're at wide open throttle, it's lean, but cruising around, that's absolutely normal.
Yeah. Or when they lift, that's another common mistake. People will be at full power, and then the natural hesitation to look down as they lift. You go into deacceleration mode on the engine, it will read.
It cuts fuel, and it's going to read very lean during that.
Which is totally normal. Yep. We only care about while throttle's applied. Corey, tell us about this part. That's a part you had something to do with.
Yeah, this year we decided to go with a different boost gauge. We actually private labeled them with the Aerocharger. These are slick little gauges. They're pretty easy to read. We made the face with large numbers. That way you can see them pretty well when you're going.
And we did this not because we wanted to have our name on a gauge. We wanted to have a high quality gauge that was a specific size. Wasn't one available. We ended up having it custom made. We wanted the large numbers. We wanted a specific boost range.
That was really it. We needed a gauge this size, and there wasn't one available, so we got one made.
And what's really nice about the new gauges, we got, not really complaints, but, a couple customers that, maybe they ended up rolling their sled, a long ways down the hill, and it damaged the gauge pods we used to use. All the new gauges are mounted directly into the plastics on the sled. That way you can roll the sled as many times as you want, and the gauges will most likely be okay.
Yeah. Now, are you still putting your name on like your mittens and your hats and stuff like that, like we do the gauge pod or the gauges, or no?
Of course.
Yeah, very important.
You don't want someone else to steal them.
This is the airbox for the air-to-water system on the Pro RMK. Why don't you describe to people what actually the air-to-water means, how it works, and a little bit about this airbox?
Sure. Like I said earlier, we're a closed-loop type system as far as air-to-water goes. We're using water out of the engine coolant system. We grab the water right after it comes out of the tunnel. So it's the coolest that the water will ever be. Run it through the intercooler core, then back into the engine. Just because of the temps of the charge air. But like I said, closed loop, we're not adding that much heat back into the water. So there's more than enough capacity to keep everything cool, the charge air as well as the engine.
Polaris has a nice cooling system.
Yeah, they do a pretty good job, especially if you put a normal RMK snow flap on it. You'll definitely see a drop in the water temps.
Yeah.
O-ringed airbox just goes right onto the throttle bodies. The two bolts that Corey talked about earlier. But we pre-install the fuel rail, pre-install the fuel injector, so you don't have to do any of that. It's all machine parts. It's going to be a good tight seal that you're not going to have to worry about leaking or anything like that. A-in fuel line or fitting that goes onto our fuel line, so everything installs real easy. But as you can kind of see on here, two different water passages or fittings. Water comes in through the core and back out. Then the air will come in the top of the airbox, then out the bottom. As it flows through the intercooler core, pulls out a fair amount of heat. Like I said, it's not going to be the coldest air possible, but it is going to be extremely consistent.
It is, and that's what's nice about it. It's consistent. And you also note that the airbox is large in volume. It mimics the size and shape of the stock factory airbox. Now, if we couple this with the closed loop water, then the water's coming in extremely cold, and it's another option for guys looking for even more performance out of an open loop system.
Yeah, that's something we've looked at, and we'll probably end up testing. A whole new cooling system just to cool the water. That way, it's completely standalone.
That's what the birdies are telling me. At least.
It will get a whole lot cooler charge temps, and it's still going to remain pretty consistent.
And both options are still going to be good because one is more involved for the install. It involves an extra pump that's drawing on the electrical system.
More wiring.
There's always. It's nice to have the options.
Yeah, you can go either way. One's a little simpler, easier to install. The other one's going to take a little bit longer. So.
All right.
The Airbox is ceramic coated. It's titanium coating. Looks really cool. It's going to last forever.
When it comes to clutching, we worked with Jason at Team Industries. And I don't know if we really call that work. We were having a hell of a good time playing with him, and he's got tons of clutching he brings out. We ended up with custom cut helix,
Yep.
Adjustable weights, but let's go ahead and see what we've got in the clutch kit. So I guess really the first thing is the adjustable weights. Like I said, these are Team adjustable weights. We've got a package that goes together so we can meet your requirements from low boost to high boost, big guy, short track, little guy, long track. Fairly simple, self-explanatory. We also have a guide to go along with it, showing you what to put in the weights, things of that nature. What else we got?
Along with the clutch weights, like we kind of mentioned, there's a helix in there. It's a twin angle helix. One of them is going to be, a really good setup for like a hill climb type racing environment. And the other one's going to be more of a play ride, boondocking back in the trees, just playing around in general. One's got a lot better back shift.
So
than
they're
the
labeled
other.
Aerocharger 1, Aerocharger 2.
Like
1 would be the hill climb guy.
Yep.
And then 2 is your boondocker guy.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty good setup. Like I said, it is a custom angle that we worked on with Jason. Then the other one's going to be a straight angle, but like I said, it's more of a racing type setup.
Good. And then here we've got the springs.
Then along with the weights and spring, or helix, we have a primary spring. We tested a whole bunch of different springs. Along with different springs, you run different weights. But the suggestions we give you are based off of these springs. It'll just give you good engagement, give you good shifting without running a ton of weight, give you good back shift. Springs play pretty big role.
You've seen the clutch kit, air to water, intercooler, all the other components. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to look at this. If you've got any more questions, feel free to give us a call. We'll always be releasing new and fun stuff as the years go by. And look forward to meeting with you guys. We're going to have lots of turbo days this year, and be sure to give us a call, and let's go riding.
Meet us on the hill.